I am Sam Motton, and with me is Jason Book, writer and artist of Me and Him, which is a webcomic at meandhimcomic.tumblr.com. Hey Jason, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good, Sam. How are you?
I'm not too bad at all. We are excited here to talk about Batman, the big oversized issue 50. And this is written by Scott Snyder with his longtime partner Greg Capullo. They've been on this Batman title since the beginning of the new 52, 50 issues in. So this one brings us Mr. Bloom's final showdown and really all the Blooms throughout the city. And the big thing about this issue is that Bruce Wayne is back fully as Batman, a bigger, better Batman, because he's kind of fully healed now from the events of Superheavy. So this gives us the conclusion to Superheavy. I think it's part 10 of Superheavy, if I have that right. So what did you make of this big issue? A lot to digest in there.
Yeah, there was a lot going on. A lot of it was like a really good big action movie, like we just saw in Batman versus Superman. Lots of cool shots of Batman fighting the big Blooms, fighting the robot Batman and things like that, and seeing him back in his costume a little bit tweaked. That was pretty cool
Hmm.
too. I like the stuff with Jim Gordon in there as well. It's like at one point I always thought they were going to kill him off or something like that. But
Hmm.
it worked well for his whole arc that he's been through. And I liked some of the things we've kind of predicted might come true, did come true. And it was
Hmm.
cool to see all of that going on. And really, if it's the last issue with these two guys working together on Batman, anyways, for a long time, it was a
Hmm.
nice send off.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a memorable issue, big issue, a lot going on, like you said. And Greg Capullo, before he leaves, he gets to introduce the new bat suit.
Hmm.
So just talking about that bat suit for a while, what'd you make of it? You know, it's got the kind of gold or yellow trim around the bat symbol.
Yeah, it was cool. Like they've done really smart things, even in the 0 year costume and other things they've done. They never change the cowl. The cowl stays the same, and that's
Mm-hmm.
really important because the silhouette is still the same. It looks like Batman
Right,
in the
right.
shadows. Having the yellow around the bat emblem instead of the circle that we all remember is kind of
Mm-hmm.
a cool riff on kind of the Batman Beyond symbol and things like that. I think it works well. Those kind of shoulder pad things he has going on kind of remind me of the 0 year suit. It's kind of neat because if they want to, other writers writing it and artists, they can kind of bring out different things that the suit might be able to do or places to hide more gadgets or something cool like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought it looked pretty sharp, but it's just, a subtle little change, which I think is nice. Every once in a while, I like for a suit to have a subtle change where
Yeah,
it's nothing drastic, but just you can sort of mark the time. Like you can remember, like, oh, that was, 2016 to 2018, it had that thing. And,
right.
it's like models of car where you can kind of just know what era you're in because you recognize the model.
Yeah.
So yeah, you mentioned that we had some predictions come true. So about 4 issues ago, I made just a stab and said that this Daryl character who was like driving the police van was part of it. I'm like him, he's a new character that they're mentioning by name, and he was missing in some certain key scenes, and so I thought maybe he was Mr. Bloom. But then there were a bunch of Mr. Blooms, and I'm like, oh, I guess I was wrong about that. But here I was redeemed a little bit because he actually was behind the sort of Mr. Bloom idea, but one of his test subjects is actually the one that took it and took off and became the first Mr. Bloom.
Yeah, like it was like we were talking about just before we started recording, a lot going on, and it definitely begs another rereading. But
Hmm.
when you got down to the actual, when you saw the guy put on the Bloom costume, you didn't see for
Hmm.
sure who it was. It kind of works better for the story because it
Yeah.
was such a weird character that I don't think it would have worked as well if they had some crazy long drawn out origin of some guy
Yeah.
who is obsessed with plants or something like that, you
Right,
know?
and I think,
Yeah.
I mean, part of the story, I think, is that, Mr. Bloom is kind of anonymous, and it's sort of like anybody in the city was supposed to be able to, like, take this pill and become Mr.
Right.
Bloom and try to use the powers for whatever they think they can use the powers for.
Hmm.
So it's almost like it fit the story perfectly that it still was an anonymous Mr. Bloom. That was kind of the whole point. So
Yeah,
I thought
totally.
that fit. But we did get a little bit of the backstory of that Daryl was kind of trying to do this thing.
Hmm.
And then you get the credit for a couple issues ago calling Duke. So Duke, who was in We Are Robin and who's been around in this Bat title for a few issues, you said that Duke is probably going to be a Black Robin coming just around the corner, and it definitely looks like that's happening right now.
Yeah, that's really cool to me. Like, through all these reboots and rebirths and things going on in DC, these characters have been around so long. When you can do something that hasn't been done before, there's never been an African American Robin, maybe in an Elseworlds tale. So this is going to be really cool, and I think it works well. And the kid's got like kind of a good origin story already, and been through a lot of stuff already. And as Batman kind of rediscovering who he is and starting fresh in a way, it's kind of neat if he can kind of get off to that start with a new character, kind of look through Gotham through different eyes as well.
So, to me, there was some other good stuff about this issue. I did like Jim Gordon kind of being the hero at the end,
Yeah,
because this has really been his story from the beginning.
that's right.
And
Yeah,
I also thought for a moment that he was maybe sacrificing himself
yeah.
because Rebirth was coming around anyway, but he
Hmm.
ended up surviving, and seeing him in the hospital there and stuff. I liked some of the Batman scenes, hitting the bat signal as as a kind of projectile weapon was kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there was a lot of cool little stuff like that. Um, but I didn't like everything about it. So like there was all of a sudden there was this star happening, which I think was connected to the super heavy elements, but it wasn't totally clear to me right away.
Yeah.
But this star was like growing, and the star was growing, and they kept calling it the weird star or something like that. I'm like,
Yeah,
is
it
that
was
the
kind
name
of
of
out
this
there.
thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like a clunky name. But the main thing was, I felt like they didn't really give a good establishing shot to show me the star. Like as it was happening, and I was supposed to be having this feeling of dread. I felt like I didn't have a good visual in my mind of what that star looked like and what it was kind of doing. I felt like it was off screen
Yeah, like
until
it kind of
way
came out
way
of
late.
nowhere.
Yeah, and then like way late at it, then they show you like, oh, here's kind of what it looks like. But I felt like I needed to have more of a visual for what it was doing along. I think it would have made the tension just build more compelling for me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that too. It's like they did so much building up to this issue, and they had to throw a lot of things in this issue that I knew that not all of it was going to stick and be great. But I think this is a real dense arc. It might benefit from going back and rereading it and maybe seeing if there's any sort of, alluding to this coming up. But yeah,
Yeah.
that, wasn't really a great point for me either.
Yeah, I think it probably was connected to those super heavy elements, and this was called super heavy from the beginning.
Yeah.
But it didn't line up as strong as I thought it could have. And
Totally.
then the Batmanium is all of a sudden like the superconductor that's just the thing you need to like somehow depower the star or whatever. Like it seemed like all of a sudden we had the star, but we also had a perfect way to stop the star like right at the end here.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit off, but most of it was good. And it did have the epilogue with Jules, and I felt like she didn't get her full development in this story arc as she maybe could have, as like the sort of potential fiance of Bruce. But there was just enough of her in there where that was a subplot happening, and it was definitely there. But I thought maybe it could have even gotten more attention. But a lot of there, that's just a few things that took away from it. But overall, this was a good issue, a memorable issue, a nice number 50 to have. And especially to have this number 50 come out right when we get a new Batman on screen too. Like to me,
Yeah.
there's just I'm excited for Batman stuff anyway, and it's nice to have a good strong comic book on the stands at the same time.
Yeah, totally. And just to wrap up there, what you're saying about Julie, in getting ready for the movie, I've been watching a lot of, my DVDs and watching the original one, some of the extras on the Michael Keaton one. And Vicky Vale was really prominent in that movie and really had a lot to
Right.
do. And
Yeah.
it gave it kind of a different vibe that we haven't really had. You had some of it with Rachel Dawes in those Nolan films, but not as much. And I would like to see, I guess we had a bit of it with Catwoman in the third one, but if they wanted to bring a love interest in for Bruce, it's not a bad idea, because especially if there's either tension of her finding out that he's Batman, or she finds out and he's like, what do I do? I think that'd be really cool, because it's kind of adds a different layer to what's going on in the Batman mythos, and that's never a bad thing.
Right? Yeah, and we're going to be getting an exciting new era of Batman books coming up with DC's Rebirth, which we're going to be talking about in the next week or so. So we can look forward to that as well.
Yeah, looking forward to it.